Well, welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Health Made Simple Show. I'm your host, Dr. Bart, and today I have a special guest with us, a nutritionist, a functional medicine practitioner, and a second, maybe third time back on the show, Callie Davis. Callie, welcome to the Health Made Simple Show. Good to have you back.
I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for bringing me back on. I'm excited to tackle more topics today and get more information out.
Beautiful. So, of course, the theme is to do the best we can to continue to make health simple, and yet we're gonna tackle some complicated. I don't know if they're complicated. You know what? There are complicated because there's a lot of confusion out there, especially this time of year. We're talking a lot about how do we get to lose weight, but we maybe have some bad habits. I want to touch on that a little bit, but I think the complicated part is that I really want to get to today is specifically women and weight loss. And especially in that category where they might be in perimenopause, going into menopause, the role of the adrenal glands, food, nutrition, hormone replacement therapy, all of that. But before we even go to that, a quick question for you. We are in December. You know, it's holiday season. There's going to be some extra parties. They're going to be staying up late a little bit. Do you have any tips and strategies? Because there's a lure for us to get off track here. Any tips or strategies to share with the audience today?
Yeah, definitely have tons of different things that I would love to kind of chat about. I think the biggest word that you just used was strategies, right? We can create or think that we're creating these disciplines, and then we see this like buffet of sweets out. And then it's like, oh my goodness, what do I do about it? So I think having the strategy and the tools that play a role. So when that discipline can't really like be our saving grace, then we like have this strategy and plan in place. So I definitely think preparing yourselves. Let's talk about holiday parties for a second. Before you go into that holiday party, don't go into it hungry. You're setting yourself up for failure. So I think that's just like an obvious and a given, but a lot of people want to go into it to enjoy the whole aspect of it. So I definitely would say, one, if we're going to talk nutritionally, let's say never really enter into that holiday party hungry. And what I mean by that is then that meal that's prior to it, we want it to be good proteins and fats because that's going to sustain us. And then if we were to do like a pasta before we go to our cookie swap, we're more likely to want to reach for that cookie because that's blood sugar spike after blood sugar spike. But if we've given ourselves, more of that balanced meal prior to it, probably less likely to want to gravitate towards that cookie. We haven't turned on those sugar receptors to have to kind of kick in, to give in. So nutritionally, that'd be for the holiday season, holiday party, for sure, something that I would encourage people to go for. Another kind of strategy that I would advise people on is instead of thinking of this as like an all or nothing, right? We're going to be like, oh my gosh, like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. It's like, what are the spaces in the time that you know that you may slip up potentially? And how do you then get right back on track? So typically what I like to tell myself a lot is, oh, what's one more? And so catching yourself in that like, oh, what's one more? Kind of all or nothing thinking of like, well, I've already done it, so I've already given it. If you catch yourself of like heading to that holiday party, having an extra cocktail than you wanted to have, maybe having too many sweets, don't give up on yourself then and don't cave in for the holiday season. Pull yourself back out with that strategy. So my biggest advice is finding a routine of your own that feels really healthy. So I like to tell people all the time, if you have a routine, you're not going to feel so deterred from that one night of doing something a little wrong. And that routine may start with your morning. So maybe you have a 5 to 10 minute morning routine set up for you that you get to like check off in the morning. So when that one night may happen where you drink a little too much, eat a little too much, you don't feel great, that next morning you're dedicated to that routine that pulls you kind of back on track. So those would be my kind of 3 layouts that I would love to chat more about, but to really throw out there for people is eat before those holiday parties, really find your routine so that when you do slip up, because it's probably going to happen, it pulls you right back in and reels you back in. Knowing our disciplines probably aren't going to win every single time.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't know that discipline has been my saving grace ever.
Yeah.
But strategy, no doubt is. And a lot of the listeners listen here, I share all the time that I know that I'm a stress eater. And I don't, my history is not too good when it comes to social eating. So I have
Mhm.
to have a plan. My biggest thing, just to your point there, I try to eat before I go, just
Mhm.
from not having this tendency to want that like food bump. So what I'm hearing you say, what are your thoughts of the third point there? I love having a plan that you're going to kind of commit to. What are your thoughts? I'm not saying throw in the towel for December, but
Right.
having a like hunker down plan for January. I love January's because it gives us time to just kind of reset everything. Do you like that idea of
I
January
love it.
being like I'm going to kind of push the envelope in January?
I love it. And I think it's so funny because for so long people were like New Year's resolutions. And I
Hmm.
think if you have this plan in place of like, instead of thinking it as like the New Year resolution for just January, it's like January sets your tone for February. And then
Hmm.
it kind of goes forward and it cascades. So hopefully by next December, this conversation could look a little different because of what you set yourself up with in January. Bart, I know you love to talk about like quarters and stuff with football. And like your first few months of the year is that first quarter. And if
Hmm.
your team or yourself is not ready and prepped for that first quarter, quarters 2, 3, and 4 of having to play catch up are a lot harder. So January especially gets that focus. So having that plan of, hey, do I really want to hunker down and figure out what my exercise routine is going to look like? Maybe I need more of a meal structure. Who do I go to for that? Maybe I want to run the cleanse that we have going. There's so many different options, but I think knowing that, okay, December, we're stressed, holidays, all of the things, we know things are going to probably be a little dicey in all of our normal routines. And so, what can we then lean towards for the month of January that sets us up and again helps us win the first quarter, which helps us win the rest of the game? So I think figuring out what your plan is, and your plan gets to be whatever you want it to be, and it gets to be really particular to yourself. And so I think that's where so many people are like, "Oh, I'm going to go to the gym more."
Hmm.
Be specific on it. Like, what's more? Or I'm going to eat more protein. What's that look like? What's that number? Get specific with that plan so that you then are really set up because you're more likely to not do something if you're really vague with it. So I think finding that strategy for sure.
You know, I like that. I like where you're going with that, and yet I can also see that where some people even listening to this might think, I get that, but I don't know what to do with it. Meaning this, that so they're in December and the train's getting a little bit derailed, which means they're a little bit off of even knowing what they want, other than I just got to stop this train wreck.
Mhm.
So, are there like particular? You just mentioned some. Mind my dog is barking in the back here. Are there particular types of things, or what do you do with your clients? Do you? I know for me, again, strategy. We run a cleanse in January, which is great because it kind of forces me some accountability.
Mhm.
I know that you, particularly, you think about having a workout schedule, a nutritional schedule, and maybe even some data collection. Can you talk about what are some of the things that you do with your clients?
Yeah. So big picture of everything. There's a lot of different branches that can come off of it, but big picture is we sit down and we kind of first off, if you have labs, love to go over those with you. If you don't, love to collect those. Those, especially in January, get to start to tell us that story of let's get your base at the beginning of the year, and then we get to then really hone in on a meal plan. So a meal plan structure, and some people don't love the rigidity of a meal plan, so it can be more meal ideas that you
Mhm.
then get to play around with, right? So I can give you a structure and be like, breakfast needs to look like this.
Mhm.
And then if maybe you wanted to do strawberries instead of some blueberries, or maybe you wanted to do some mushrooms and carrots instead of onions and peppers. You know, you get to play around with it, but overarching, you have a general guideline. And then other people want to be like, tell me the exact amount, when to eat, what to eat. And that's also something that I love to build out for people. It gives me some creative joy to kind of play around and figure out what people like, what people don't like. Because again, like, what I like may not be what you like. And so I want my meal structure to be more, red meat, and other people may want it to be more chicken and eggs. And like, that's okay. But we get to sit down and be like, okay, your body requires this. These are your goals. Say you wanted to lose 10 pounds. We would work on that.
Mm,
in our nutrition. And then we would also establish a workout plan for you,
mm,
whether that's me showing up at your house, training you one-on-one, whether that's me creating a virtual plan for you because you don't live in the area and I can't show up to your house. And then you get to do that. And it's me walking you through the workouts like I was next to you, but I'm not. It's just through the screen.
mm.
Or you have a gym you want to go to and you just want someone to, write out a workout because you know what to do. You just want the accountability of someone checking in on you daily saying, hey, did you show up this morning? Or those types of things. So the combo of definitely running your labs, get that baseline, and then let's figure out how we should eat. What looks good for our bodies? What are our goals and how do we attain those goals with our food and our movement? So that's a lot of what I do with people and I love it and I have so much fun with it because that's my creative brain is in that space. So it's fun for me.
Which is really unique because there's so often, you can find someone that knows, let's just say fitness and certain exercise to do. And even if they're curtailing, I love it that sometimes we get those really personalized for our bodies. What I want at 55 is different than when I'm 35.
Right.
And then the ability to have it with their weight loss goals and whatnot, and then collecting data, especially with the data part, and meal planning, which is huge. I didn't think much of meal planning for so long until one time I got a meal plan.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very specific. I was like, all right, I want to lean down a little bit. And one of the things, if you guys listening to this, if you've never tracked your food before, it's eye opening.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
mind boggling when you start to track everything you put in your body, like your sauces, your creamers, a little cookie or cracker over there, a little piece of cheese you had before dinner. I was blown away. And it became so obvious to me that having at least a time that I had a structured meal plan that was kind of caloric, almost counted out in advance.
Yeah.
So it aligned with my weight loss goals. And lo and behold, when I followed it, it worked, which is,
Right.
that's kind of the idea there. So
For
I
sure.
love that. I love the idea that that's something that you offered. So if I'm hearing you correct, Callie, if someone did want to work, so you literally could do a meal plan with them, do data with them, meaning everything from literally getting on the scale, that simple of data, but then also maybe doing blood work, checking blood glucose levels, iron levels, hormones, all of that. And then even if they're not here physically, you could do a virtual type workout, etc.
100%. And going back to what you said about the tracking, I think tracking can get such a really bad rep, right? And a lot of times when I work with people, people are like, I don't want to track my calories forever. I'm like, I don't want you to track your calories forever, right? Like inherently, and I think we talked about this last time, like we are born to be like intuitive eaters. Our bodies tell us when we're hungry, if we're in the right space, and our bodies are going to tell us if we're full, if we're in the right space. The tracking piece though can become really helpful doing it for like 2 or 3 weeks, right? It gives you, like you said, the idea of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize what my creamer was doing. That the extra ketchup I put on my burger, whatever it is, you name it, they all have value to us. Because I love to approach eating from like a nutrient standpoint rather than the caloric standpoint. But the writing's on the wall with calories a lot too. And so if we then get to recognize, oh my gosh, a piece of chicken is X amount of calories versus this baked potato, it's like, eat more of that piece of chicken, right? And so that writing gets to show up because a lot of people just don't know what the caloric value of certain foods are as well. And so like for so long, fats have gotten a bad rep in caloric ranges because they're 9 calories per gram of them. But at the same capacity, you're not eating the amount of fats as you'd be eating as the amount of carbs. So you're more likely going to eat more of those carbs than you are fats. And so it's just funny to be able to watch and be like, oh my goodness, I've thought this all wrong.
All right, so I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to get kind of specific and talk about the role of stress when it comes to weight gain or weight loss.
Yeah.
And what do you see? Like, how much of a factor is stress on weight gain or weight loss?
I would say it's pretty high up there. I would give it in the top 3 for sure. And I say that in regards, so maybe I might get a little sciencey for a second here, but bear with me, I got a point. So if we think about our stress hormones and where they're being produced, those are those adrenal glands, right? And if we're stressed, we're fatiguing those glands and we're keeping our state and our bodies in that state of constant fight or flight with more and more and more of those stress hormones being released. And if we think about other aspects, like we need hormones to help us like regulate our intake, regulate how much we eat, when we stop eating, all that type of stuff. And if we're constantly pumping in hormones that are actually fat storage hormones as well. And so if the body has the influx of this hormone and you're staying in that state, so you're not giving it a moment to know what to do with that hormone, it's saying, fat cell, here we come. And so it's going into those fat cells and it's being stored. And so we start to really recognize people are like, Callie, I'm eating really well. I'm sleeping okay. I'm moving my body in this, that, and the other ways. And I can't lose weight. And I'm like, tell me about your life. And it takes a second for them to like really understand that if the body's constantly in this like fight mode right here, it never gets the moment to relax and understand the other mechanisms that it wants to do. And so say you're exercising constantly, but all of your energy is going to that stress, you're not able to repair. And so everything's like protect, and protection is that cushion. So it's like we think about around our organs and stuff, like that's the first place people see weight gain a lot. It's because the body's in protection mode, because those are your vital organs. So it really wants to protect that space. Therefore, anytime it's stressed, it says, let's produce more of these hormones. Let's produce more of this. And then also just another piece of stress. People don't recognize the tendencies that they typically have when they're super stressed. Like you mentioned, stress eating. Or poor sleep, and any of that type of stuff is also going to lead to that weight gain. But the sciencey side of stuff is like the writing is on the wall why you're not losing weight when you're in a super stressed state.
And I'm guessing that's kind of where the idea, the concept of overtraining comes in there, where like you could be putting too much stress on the body too repetitively, and it might not even be just the exercise you're doing, but it's all the ancillary things around it, your life, you're staying up a little bit too late, you're going to too many, cocktail parties or whatever it may be. Right. So, yeah. So with that, and again, maybe even back to a little bit more of the science part of it, I hear the term out there a fair amount. You and I have talked a little bit about I think what it's called, cycle syncing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, and this is an important topic. One, I don't think that many women have any understanding, or at least not enough understanding about what role their cycle plays into the when, what, and how.
For sure.
Do a little deep dive for us there. Help people understand what that means.
So general overview of our menstrual cycle as women. So men, this is women.
Very, very general. We don't have to go too deep here.
But general overview of it is we have 4 phases of it. You have your menstrual phase. That's your period. That's when you're releasing the egg, right? Then it goes into your follicular phase, ovulatory phase, and then luteal phase. And so every part of your cycle, you have different hormones that are being released, and your body is also requiring different nutrients, and it's requiring different modes of exercise. So in that menstrual phase, that phase 1, you're depleted. Estrogen, progesterone's lowest it is because everything is shedding out of you, right? So energy is low. So if you're going and running 10 miles or doing an Orange Theory class or doing like HIIT workout while you're menstruating, that's adding stress to your body. And then you hear the term, women a lot of times are like, I just feel so swollen. Your body isn't able to recover because you're putting that stress on it when it has no other hormones to counteract the stress hormones that we have going on. So that's kind of that phase 1. And when we talk about the food that comes into phase 1, we want to think foods like warm, comforting foods in a way, but also that are like super nutrient dense, especially with iron. So you're bleeding. That's what's happening, right? So we want to make sure we're replenishing that with more of those red meats, dark leafy greens, saute that spinach, add some good, fermented foods in there. All of the things to start to support our body as it's being depleted, especially focused on more of those electrolytes. You're really depleted at this point right now. And so that's kind of the big key in like part 1. Part 2 is your follicular phase, typically is like 7 to 10 days long. So it's about a week is what I typically tell people, energy's starting to come up. So you're going to start to feel a little bit better. Doing more workouts that are kind of more, those longer runs, if you wanted to bring them back in, maybe you're starting to incorporate a little bit more higher intensity stuff. You are wanting to kind of start to focus here on more of those like cruciferous, nutrient dense vegetables, as well as those fats. So those fats are going to be for that energy as you're building it back up. That's what's going to last that energy. And also you're starting to build those hormones back up. So we want to make sure we're getting those fats back in to kind of build back up that space. So think of that as like kind of like your pre-race warm up is your follicular phase. It's like you're warming that body up, getting you ready for your ovulatory phase. And this phase really isn't that long. So any women out there who are trying to get pregnant, this phase really only lasts about 48 hours. And those are like your key moments of when you would get pregnant. That's when your body is like most primed to get pregnant in that space. And that is where you got the most energy. Those hormones are the highest they're going to be as they've climbed up. So like doing your Orange Theory classes, doing sprints, interval training, anything that feels big and bold for you in those 2 to 3 day window, that's where you're going to take that home run hitter right there. But at the same time, because hormones are so high, we really want to focus on more of that anti-inflammatory type food. And then especially for women trying to get pregnant, anything that has more zinc in it. That's going to be a super crucial mineral to bring into your body in that time. And then our final phase, which you hear a lot of women talking about, I feel like it's the most talked about phase right now, is the luteal phase. It is your longest. It's somewhere between 12 to 16 days. Progesterone is still climbing high. So we saw our estrogen peak in that ovulatory. Now we got our progesterone climbing super high. And so this is where we start to like, especially towards the end of this, start to feel more of that brain fog, a little bit slower. We want to start to slow down, right? Mm-hmm. Our body's getting prepared to produce and release an egg and start this phase all over again. So kind of how we talked about in that menstrual phase of like wanting to go with more like warm foods that are feeling a little bit more comforting, those like root vegetables, things that are going to like keep us grounded and rooted in this time. Because again, we're having these hormonal spikes going up before we're about to like drop. And so when you've gone from here to here in about 16 days, you may feel a little crazy for a second there, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why like eating foods that are going to be super rooting, keeping you full with those nutrients. Mm-hmm. And then this is where that yoga, Pilates, going on longer walks, starting to tone back on that HIIT type of movement is going to be really important. So that's kind of like the general overview on cycle syncing. And if we go back to what we talked about with stress, if we get to kind of pay attention to where we are in our cycle and take things, use tools out there that help us stay a little bit more relaxed, especially during the phases where our bodies are craving to kind of calm down and simmer down, like that menstrual or luteal phase, we're going to set ourselves up for success. Mm-hmm. And if we follow some of these things as well, we might not have as severe cramps and other conditions. Maybe our acne won't get so bad because we're not giving in to the fluctuation of the hormones and we're letting them naturally occur.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. That was awesome. Thanks. So what I'm hearing you saying, a couple of things. I want to dive into those a little bit even deeper here. So what I'm hearing you saying is that it can be a little complicated for women.
It can. It really can.
Yeah. Because guys, we don't have to worry about these different phases. So, and ladies, here's the thing. I as many years I've worked with women, what I've recognized is that the cleaner you are in your life and the more intuitive you let yourself be. And I find most women are very, very intuitive. Mm-hmm. It's the willingness to trust their intuition. So for example, like in that luteal phase, I find a lot of women want to have a little more grounding foods. They want to have some of those carbs, like a sweet potato and stuff like that. Right. Where normally it's thinking, I can't have the carbs, but that might be the time, especially, we know that progesterone needs some carbohydrates in order to develop properly, and you made a great point there about the cramping and maybe even potentially down the road cysts and stuff like that. I find is almost the violation of that luteal phase where women don't allow that nurturing of the progesterone to be made. That creates this imbalance between the estrogen and the progesterone, essentially the estrogen dominance.
Right.
That's the acne, that's the hair loss, that's the cramping, that's the mood swings. And I think if we, to your point there, kind of allow ourselves to be a little bit more intuitive and kind of get in the flow of like listening to the body, man, life can be a lot easier. And with that being said, I think this is a perfect one of the reasons I say often to find someone like yourself who is very knowledgeable and understand things like cycle syncing, because
Mhm.
doing that on your own when you're not feeling your best, virtually impossible. Virtually
100%.
impossible. Yeah.
You like have different life things going on too, right? So like
Yes.
I keep mentally preparing the fact that I'm run a marathon next year, right? How do I get my body? So like we all have these different achievements and things that we want to do, but
Hmm.
having the understanding of like how to support your body in that space of doing those things. So many
Yep.
women are like, I'm just going to power through. And it's our intuition for women to just like want to power through and
Mhm.
do things because we're like, we can do it. We got it. Strong,
Yep.
independent women. We can't take anything, right?
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes we have to really look at what's going on
Yeah.
inside to then better understand actually what we're doing, like you said, is causing us more harm. If we're not protecting that luteal phase,
Mm.
estrogen dominance is so on the rise right now. We have
Yeah.
PCOS and all of that stuff crazily out rising because a lot
Mm.
of women aren't protecting certain
Yeah.
aspects.
Maybe even like a simple way of saying that, ladies, if you have the same workout schedule and intensity all month long, you have the wrong schedule. Unfortunately, there's probably about a 10-day window in there that you're literally working against yourself. So if you like Orange Theory or CrossFit or whatever it may be, or even the Peloton, and you're hammering it during that luteal phase, there's a good chance that you're suppressing progesterone, and that's not so good. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's going to create this massive imbalance. All right, so that kind of leads us to the next topic, and this becomes a real interesting one. And you and I have talked about this a fair amount with about a lot of our clients, what I've seen over all these years, and it's the usage of hormone replacement therapies. And over the years, especially that the more experience I gain, I have found more and more, I think, opportunities where hormone replacement therapy can be wonderful. And I know a lot of times people say, Doc, really, I thought you were this whole natural guy. And I am. And I think there can be a time and a place. What I'd like to ask you about is I think there's a misperception out there. I think there's a misperception. And I think some of the docs are causing it. Some of the ones that even claim to be kind of in the functional medicine space, that hormone replacement therapy is going to help you lose weight.
Right. Yeah.
It
Ooh.
might surprise people where this conversation goes. Yet, I think everyone listen closely, because hormones may not balancing or adding hormones may not balance your weight. In fact, or balancing your hormones may not help you lose weight. In fact, it might be the opposite. I'd love to hear your input on that.
Yeah.
What is the impact of hormone replacement therapy doing on the scale?
Yeah. So loaded topic for
Yeah,
sure.
no doubt.
I think to start this conversation off, we have to understand like why women are using these hormone replacements. And so it's typically people who are starting to enter into menopause are using them. And like you said, do I think there's such a benefit for them in some capacity? 100%. But I think the timing of them can be really important. So I want to like draw the picture out there. And you've used this example before, and I think it's super helpful. But we got four guys that are really kind of dictating our endocrine system. And one of them is those ovaries. And so the ovaries are starting to retire, but we don't really know when he's going to fully give out. And so if we start to try and replace the ovaries, but they're still starting to show up here and there, we're
Mhm.
doubling down and we're
Mhm.
adding stress to the system because the system's like, wait, whoa, do I trust the ovary or do I trust the hormone that's being put into my body? And so we're
Mhm.
starting to see all of these imbalances start to happen. And again, that conversation of stress on the body and how it can impact weight is definitely a topic in a space that I think is super crucial of like the timing and knowing when to start the hormones. Because a lot of times women want to do them like the first hot flash they get, or the first bad night of sleep they get, or like the subtle twinge of brain fog. And I'm like, let's take a moment there. Let's really recognize like what actually is your system doing. And so back to running the data, running the labs, we get to kind of catch that picture. I also think this is a really fascinating statistic about the hormones like estrogen. Um, Estrogen at its max optimization. This is like we're doing everything to support it. We have it at its best. The max it can do for us is increase our caloric burn by like 100 calories a day. So that's
And
about
that's not
700
much.
calories a week. It's not
Yeah.
a lot.
Mm-mm.
And so people say, oh, estrogen can help me burn fat.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, that's like one Starbucks drink in your week. Get a Starbucks Frappuccino, and like that's offsetting the estrogen that's coming into your body. And so we get this misperception that like, yes, it has a capability to increase, caloric burn, but to the degree that it can, isn't as great as people have thought it to be. And then if we talk about the hormone like testosterone,
Mm-hmm.
it's a growth hormone.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally, like we were discussing this not long ago, but like if you were to take testosterone, you're going to build muscle. Like that's what it's going to do for you. And now for women, I'm not saying like you take testosterone, you're going to build muscle, but it is causing cell growth. And then if we're in a state of stress with excess cell growth, those are going to be probably fat cells that are going to be growing.
Yeah.
And so I just think that there can be so much to tackle with it. And again, like there is a time and a place for them, but you have to really have the whole picture and have tried a couple of different things, I think, in order to then be like, that's the resort that I'm at.
Yeah, this might come to some surprise to your point there, Callie. For a lot of people listening to this and share this and spread this out with your friends, especially the women who are considering hormone replacement therapy. I think there's a great place for it, but it is not a weight loss strategy, and that's real important. I would say collectively, and this is where I would say all the women out there, if you are considering hormone replacement therapy, ask your doctor this, and if they say no, that doesn't exist, I think you might need to find, I hate saying this, but I think you need to find a different doctor. This is my experience. This is that women who go on hormone replacement therapy for the most part gain weight. And there's a reason behind that. So when we bring in exogenous hormones and we're bringing them in day after day after day, they're fat soluble. So there's hormones are supposed to be responsive to law of supply and demand. And to your point, if your ovaries are kind of retiring and then they're coming back, but you're bringing in hormones every single day exogenously, whether it's a cream, whether it's through a pellet or a troche or something. If you're getting them every single day, you're going to end up with an excess amount of a growth hormone. Mm-hmm. Progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, they're all anabolic. They're going to make things grow.
Yeah.
And if you don't need them in the moment, your body's going to store them in a fat cell. And I'll also say this. That's some of the hardest weight you're ever going to lose because your body deems that as something that's naturally occurring in your body, especially if you're using bioidentical hormones, which I think, again, can have a place for it, but understanding the role that hormones play. And I'll go one step farther and just kind of add to, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well. I see a lot of women who will go on hormone replacement therapy and say, man, I feel good. Like they sleep a little bit better. Maybe they've balanced out their energy and their brain fog and they feel better, but they're gaining weight. Now they have this interesting, really, really, really interesting dichotomy of, do I want to feel better or am I more focused on my weight? And that brings up another kind of huge can of worms to open up. And this is very interesting with a lot of the women that I see, and God bless them, I love them all. We have these open dialogues. And sometimes they're literally puzzled. Would I rather lose weight and feel miserable or just feel good and be okay that I gained an extra couple pounds? Right. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. And that's such a tough space. I'm not a menopausal woman yet. I'm not there. So I'm like, Sometimes I'm like, I wish I knew what it felt like. And then I'm like, no, I don't even want to think about it right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's such a tricky spot because it's like, at what point does feeling good outweigh the weight gain? Because when you're gaining that weight and you feel really uncomfortable in your skin, one, but also it can start to make you not feel as good too.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
then all of a sudden you are like, brain fog's coming back, I'm feeling more tired, motivation's not there. Your doctor's like, let's up your hormones.
Mhm.
And so then they are stair stacking this on top, causing
Mhm.
potentially more weight gain to happen, which at the same rate is not making you feel better. So it's like,
Mhm.
yes, we're like tackling an area just for our bodies to catch up. And then we have to tackle it again. And then it catches up. It's like we're climbing the stairs, plateauing, climbing the stairs. And so I think the key to a lot of this too, and women don't recognize the importance of staying really clean if you're on
Mhm.
hormones and
Mhm.
moving your body when you're on hormones, right? So it's like we get this motivation back, we all of this stuff. Well, let's go back to what we talked about with cycle syncing. So
Mhm.
if like you're in the phase where the body is under stress and the ovaries are starting to give out and you're adding all these hormones back in, yada yada yada, we have to really then sit down and focus on, okay, what type of movement is going to be best for me right now?
Mhm.
If I'm in a super stressful season and I have these extra hormones coming in, I probably don't want to be doing HIIT workouts,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? This is where my yoga, Pilates, walking, I'm going to pull you in that direction. Maybe we're still doing weight training too. That would be an awesome place, especially for women over the age of 40, to making sure that they're using their muscles for that bone density and all of that. I think that's could be a whole nother topic.
Mhm.
But those are all great options, but going and doing, those 15-mile runs at the same time as stress and hormones coming in that our body's like, I don't know what to do with them all the time, could be super detrimental. And so I think you have to figure out, you can't just go on hormones and be like, I'm on hormones, da 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 da, everything's great. I think
Yeah.
you really have to be like, okay, what is my movement routine? What is my eating routine? What are my patterns? How can I stay super clean? Because you are putting in something into your body that is foreign.
Yeah, I think I don't know if that message could be said loud enough or clear enough because it's a hard one to absorb. So, the body's going through change, especially in that perimenopausal to the menopausal phase. And I learned something a long time ago, which I wish I could unlearn, but I can't because it's a truth and I have to share it with all my women. And then it's that your creator made your body in the eyes of perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the secrets that it did, our creators did was said, oh, I'm going to plan for your future.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ways I'm going to do that is the longer you can extend your cycling, the longer you have your period in life, often those women live the longest. And then the second thing would be that I'm going to make sure that as you are rich in your hormones, as your body starts to go in decline of production of hormones, we're going to start to store. This is the part of which I never learned. You're going to start to store extra hormones for the need in the future, and it's going to store them into the most profound fat cells that you have, which are right between your belly button and your upper thighs.
Mm-hmm.
My point being is this, ladies, listen, it is a natural part of aging. As your cycle goes away, you go from perimenopause to menopause, that naturally your body was designed to increase hormone storage around your waistline. And this is what, to your point, Callie, that if they start going on hormone replacement therapies prior, the timing is critical here. I'll talk about that timing in just a moment. If they go on prior to their body really needing to do that, then all of a sudden they're going to be storing a lot more. Now, feeling great along the way because there's not going to be any absence of hormones,
Right.
yet now they're going to be storing them at an abnormal rate. And that's where we see some of the weight gain. So the timing there. If I was to put my finger on it, my wife and I were having this conversation recently, and she was saying, "Well, when do you think the proper time is?" And I don't know that there's. I'm. All I can say is this is my clinical evidence that I would say that about 80% of the way through perimenopause.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, not at the first imbalance, not at the first little bit of brain fog, not at the first hot flash that you get. I'm talking about 80% of the way. Now, listen, that means for many women, perimenopause is 5 to 10 years.
Right.
So there's a dance with this change that's taking place. All right. Any thoughts on that before we get this thing wrapped up?
Yeah, I think the last thing I would say to that is if you are in the prior 80%, right? You're in your first 80% of perimenopause and you're feeling that lack of motivation, you're feeling like, I don't know what to do, you've turned to hormones. There's a lot of things that you can do, but I will say accountability in that space is huge. And
Future.
so if you're trying your best to not get on them or you are on them and you're still not feeling great, accountability is huge. And a lot of the women that I work with who are either in that prior 80% and are eventually probably may go on hormones, but right now they're trying not to, or that
Mhm.
they are on hormones, accountability is huge. And so a lot of them turn to me and they're like, when I was feeling more tired and brain fog, which is naturally, like you just said, like that's naturally going to happen.
Mhm.
That's what the creator had intended for us, was to slow down a little bit, but not to that extent of not doing anything. Having somebody to hold your space for you, that is
Mhm.
accountability, whether that's with the movement, whether that's with your eating, whether that's with whatever it needs to be, allowing yourself to acknowledge the fact that you're probably not going to be able to get through it by yourself.
Mhm.
Like that's what it is.
So if you're one of the women that are listening to this right now, maybe in the midst of just feeling like crap, that the bodies are changing, everything's off, they're getting hot flashes, hormones are going crazy, libido's changing, all that stuff, and maybe they went on hormones a little bit early, and they're listening to this conversation, and they've gained weight. Is it too late for them? What do they do at that point?
I don't think it's too late for them. I think reestablishing patterns that are going to be conducive to them, right? So like say prior to going on hormones, you slow down. You stop moving your body in the ways that you were. You're probably reaching for more, you may have kids at home. You're reaching for their snacks more. Recognize that like the handful of goldfish that you used to be able to do with you can't probably be doing that as much anymore. And so I think it's not too late for you to really understand, okay, something though has to shift. Like I couldn't just get on hormones and not make a lifestyle change. Like, and again, like you said, if we wanted, our goal was to keep that period as long as we can. And now we're having something that could be interfering. Again, they have their place. I'm not bashing them in any means,
Mhm.
but we now get to be like, okay, we have a little bit of this motivation back. How can we move our bodies?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a little bit more of this drive back. How do we get a little bit more strategic or disciplined? It's like pulling that back in because it's really comfortable to stay in that space of like, I don't want to say it's lazy, but stay in the lazy space, right? It's like you adapted to it, you adapted to that new schedule, and you just added hormones into the schedule that you were on. And you
Mhm.
didn't think about the fact that, okay, other things are back in my life. Let's pick myself back up.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And again, I think that's it, because if they keep doing the same thing and just add the hormones, that's probably clinically what I see the most. That they really haven't changed much, hoping that the hormones were going to be the tidal wave that just changed everything. And rarely do we ever see that. So,
Right.
all right, awesome. And so what I'm hearing is that yes, no matter where they're at, there's always possibility and opportunity. The human body is so amazing. I've seen so much over these years that when people say, "Well, I don't know if I can," you can. It it's simple in concept. It doesn't mean that it's easy. And yet, with some good structure and some kind of, a good plan, good strategy, like we talked earlier, I think that all the things that we want from our bodies are capable. And sometimes we have to get a little dirty doing it. We got to put a little grit into things here. All right, Callie. So we're about to head out here. Any last thoughts for our listeners here? Anything that you'd like to share with the upcoming year? Anything else that some insights you might want to share?
I think the biggest thing is go into the year, figure out a plan for yourself, whether that's
Mhm.
you need somebody to help you create that plan. You had a plan that you fell off the rails with in June and you want to try at it again. Whatever it is, find something that you feel like is sustainable and that can work for you because that's where the magic's going to happen.
Mhm.
If you try and do something that is like super foreign and brand new, you're probably not going to stick to it. So the small changes can equal the big changes. Don't try and change too much at once, but also recognize that we are all here to support you and help you on that journey. I think just knowing your resources and utilizing them well is going to be really crucial kind of going
Then
forward.
then you're currently still taking private clients. So if
Yeah.
someone wanted to reach out to you and work with you, how would they go about that?
Yeah. Same way. Contact Balance. Info@balance30a.com is a great email. You can email someone over. My schedule is all there. And then we can figure out. And again, like I can tackle a whole plethora of things. If you want a workout person, meal plan, labs, pull it all together. More of a personal tailored thing, more of a concierge experience. I also offer that. So reach out to us over at Balance, and I'm happy to answer any questions and kind of go from there.
Sweet. I'll make sure that all that's in the show notes, or at least I'll make sure that someone else makes sure that's all in the show notes. All right, folks. Well, once again, thanks for tuning in here to the Health Made Simple Show. Appreciate all that you guys do. Keep tuning in, keep sharing it out, keep spreading love, and of course, continue to elevate your own game, taking care of your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.